Nothing but the truth, so help us God. I'm Rick Wiles. Today is Thursday, November 2nd, 2023. A prominent Russian economist has warned Russian investors that the world is at the beginning of a colossal global financial crisis. Alexander Razuvinav is a member of Russia's supervisory board of the Guild of Financial Analysts and Risk Managers. He said the world is in for a big crisis that may be sparked by World War III or the collapse of the European Union and the euro currency. He suggested that Italy and Spain could leave the EU and also convert their euros into other currencies. Mr. Razuvinav told Moscow's Izvestia News, quote, actually, it's a bankruptcy, a banking crisis. Maybe something else will happen. But basically, these are harbingers of a crisis, and it will, of course, be global, end of quote. He said that if there is a major crisis, energy prices will fall, but precious metals will soar in value. The Russian economists advised Russian investors to adjust their portfolios away from stocks and bonds. He recommended a portfolio weighted 75% in gold, silver, and Bitcoin, and only 25%, and that would be in oil company stocks. Let's take a 1-minute break, and when I return, Jonathan Rose will be with us to talk about a possible global financial crisis and what you can do to protect your money.
Are you concerned about his economics and how your IRA and 401k will fare during these turbulent times? Top experts are predicting now is the time to be protecting your assets with physical gold and silver. Find out why Genesis Gold Group is the #1 recommended company by your favorite preppers and homestead channels. Receive Genesis Gold Group's free definitive gold guide today, or give them a call at 800-200-GOLD.
Well, welcome back to True News. Bloomberg News reported that central banks around the world are hoarding more gold than previously thought this year. The World Gold Council said central banks purchased 337 tons of gold in the third quarter of 2023. That ended in September. Central banks purchased 175 tons of gold in the second quarter and 103 tons in the first quarter of 2023. So far this year, central banks have purchased a whopping combined total of 800 tons of gold in the first 9 months of 2023. Well, what's driving central banks to hoard gold? Genesis Gold Group founder and president Jonathan Rose is here to answer that question. Jonathan, good to see you. Why are central banks this year hoarding gold?
Yeah, it's a great question. Now, obviously, with all the uncertainty in the marketplace, you just have to turn on the TV, read a newspaper, and you're going to see a lot of volatility out there or signs of economic stress. Anytime there's economic stress, we are going to see people move to a flight to safety and security that does include the yellow metal. Now, a lot of these central banks are buying more gold right now than they've ever done so before. Now, why is that? Well, are they going to announce the reasons to us? Absolutely not. But should we be doing what the central banks are doing behind the curtain? I believe, in fact, we should be, because they're not going to back up our own dollars for us, but they are concerned with the outlook of the economy. Obviously, with what's happening in the Middle East with Israel, what's happening with the bond market, what's happening with the value of the US dollar, interest rates continue to climb, the housing market on the brinkering of, teeter-tottering downwards. There's so many problems that we have right now that people are are referring to this as the everything bubble. Everything and more that can go wrong. So what's on my radar right now, but probably the central banks are also looking at, are commercial loans. Commercial loans are defaulting at such an alarming rate. Actually, there were some great articles that came out about this the other day on Yahoo and on Reuters, and they're just talking about how Moody's, our credit bureau system that monitors these banks' liability, how safe they are, stress tests, etc. They've been downgrading these banks because these bank balances are carried and are holding very unsafe commercial debt. As commercial debt is defaulting at an alarming rate, the bank earnings of these large corporations are going to take a hit. Once this gets reported to the Wall Street casino, as I call it, then the earnings are going to tumble, and so are these bank stocks. So there's a lot of stress that's going to be happening in the banking sector leading up to the end of this year, where there is panic that leads to sell-offs, and obviously sell-offs are going to affect people's portfolios and obviously market conditions. So central banks are trying to hedge. They're trying to protect themselves. On one side, they may have something that's declining. They want to have something on the other side of the portfolio that's inclining. Well, you can do exactly as our central banks are doing by protecting yourself with precious metals. I always tell people to start with gold coins, gold bars, whether you're holding on to it yourself or even protecting an IRA or 401k, but do as the central banks are doing, because our government isn't going to back up your retirement dollars yourself. So it's just a question of being proactive, understanding this, and not being reactive.
So the banks are they're shoring up their own investment portfolio to make sure they are stable. If you look at those numbers, Jonathan, 800 tons the first 9 months of 23. But if you go back to the first quarter, the central banks only bought roughly 100 tons. So the second quarter and the third quarter, they bought 700 tons. And when you look at the numbers, the first quarter was 103. The second quarter, I forget what the precise number was, 175, 200, I forget the exact number. But what we're seeing is a dramatic increase each quarter. So the mindset of the central bankers as we go into the fourth quarter this year is far more pessimistic as it was when they entered 2023. Each quarter they have bought more gold than they bought the previous quarter, which it clearly indicates that the central bankers of the world are growing increasingly concerned about the stability of the world.
Yeah.
So,
and those numbers are absolutely staggering, by the way. You know, we say them 800 tons, 200 tons. These numbers are absolutely staggering with the amount of yellow metal that these companies and corporations and banks, or these banking cartels, as I refer to them, how much they're buying should be a red flag. And this should be an alarm bell for people to kind of wake up and really understand why they're doing this and what the ramifications are and what this means to people like you and I as an investor.
Jonathan, is there an abundance of gold in the world, or is it a dwindling supply?
It's definitely a dwindling supply. So when you hear the word gold, you also got to refer back to its other name, and that's precious metals. Now, it's precious for a reason, because there literally is a finite supply of gold. I believe the last time I checked that if you took all of the gold in the world, it would fill about 3.5 or 4 Olympic-sized swimming pools. Now, when you put that motion in your head and you can visualize that, you realize, oh boy, that doesn't sound like that much gold. And in fact, you'd be absolutely right. There's a finite supply of it. And even when they do find a new gold source per se, and they start mining and excavating the gold out of the ground, it could take 7 years to actually set up a new mine, excavate the gold, and make it into a profitable operation as a gold miner. So yes, there's a finite supply of it. I think that's also going to be a bullish factor in these next few years in terms of geopolitical tensions rising, but people pouring into the yellow metal and pouring into something that has a limited supply. So strong demand, limited supply, that's going to be another driving force or a very bullish factor in driving up the price of the yellow metal.
If the central banks bought 800 tons of gold in the last 3 months, or no, the first 9 months of 2023. Somebody had to sell it. Where does all this gold come from?
Good question. So I used to work on the London Metal Exchange, and on the London Metal Exchange, they trade contracts in futures. So you will have these big storing facilities that are holding precious metals. And as we speak, I know Brink's operations, and I have clients that work there. They're building these massive Brink-style depositories for the government right now. These big gold bars or gold blocks, these good delivery bars, they actually never leave the warehouse. It's almost like contracts being bought and sold, but the gold remains staying in one location. Now, there have been reports over the years that when reconciliations have been done at these large depositories, that huge bars are going missing, and also very much so in silver. So like you said, who is buying these bars, right? If they're beginning to leave the warehouse and people are taking possession of them, are they just, rich Saudi families taking their positions and holding on to it? Are they big corporations, or are they just other people out there who have a special interest in the gold? So there's definitely a cloud of secrecy in terms of who's actually accepting good delivery bars out there. But remember, folks, you don't have to have a gold brick at home. You can have something spendable, barterable, but that's still gold coins, gold bars. And again, physical gold and silver that you can hold on to. And I often make the analogy that, silver will buy you the bread and gold will buy you the bakery. So they're both very, versatile metals. And whether you're holding them onto at home in a safety deposit box, or buried in the ground, or it's being held in a licensed depository backing up your IRA or 401k, there's definitely ways that you can hold on to the tangible assets and explore how easy that is to do, especially through an IRA, which is a tax-free rollover. A lot of people aren't even aware of that. So there's ways you can hold metals, and it's just understanding and getting an education on how to store it, how to hold on to it, and how to utilize it in your portfolio.
Jonathan, the last time you were here, a source had told you that the Federal Reserve was building massive vaults throughout the Midwest of the United States of America. Were you able to get additional information?
I spoke to that gentleman, and he confirmed with me that they are looking at using these vaults to store metals. So as we kind of enter the era of a cashless society, or these CBDC, central bank digital currencies that I've talked briefly about before, the government is very aggressively, hoarding metals. They have to store it somewhere. So these new storage facilities are definitely going to be utilized for metals, amongst other arenas, I'm sure. But they're definitely building secure facilities to hold assets like gold and silver.
Okay. You mentioned rolling over retirement accounts and investing in gold. There are major changes coming to
exit 407 onto State Route 66 towards Severe
citizens in 2024. There's a tax law that takes effect in January that directly impacts individual retirement accounts. Does that impact your business?
No, because in IRAs, the beautiful thing about a self-directed IRA is it's completely tax-free. So you get to defer those taxes. If you have a Roth IRA, then you've already paid taxes on it. If it's a traditional IRA, you can still roll it over tax-free, penalty-free into another asset of your choice. One of those assets of the choice happens to be, gold and silver. You may have heard of people putting real estate in an IRA, or water rights, mineral rights, again, precious metals. If it's legal and it's allowed in an IRA from the IRS, you can see a list of asset classes that are permissible. And that's the beautiful thing about a self-directed IRA, is the self word to me personally means you're taking the control back. So again, there's going to be no penalties when people do this. It's just a direct rollover from point A to point B. And in fact, nothing really changes for people who have IRAs or 401ks. You're just moving out of these risky asset classes, moving those funds sideways, and then just holding on to tangible metals.
Jonathan, the current state of affairs in the world, very, very unstable. This is one of the most dangerous times I've seen in my lifetime. Everything is just seems like it's ready to explode. Nothing seems secure and stable anymore. And you've been in this business for a number of years. Is this time different for you and for clients? Is this a more, or is the current instability? This is what I'm trying to ask. Is the current instability of the world a stronger reason to roll over retirement accounts into precious metals than it has been at any other time that you've been in business?
I've always been a big believer in gold.
Check report ahead on I-40.
Because I've always been the belief of having something tangible means I own it. That's always been the belief, no matter what the price of gold has ever done. Now, in terms of this current market, I believe, like you, that we're in uncharted waters. So we have so many problems today than we ever did 10, 20 years ago. Obviously, when the 9/11 tragedy hit us, that was a very strong bull market for precious metals because there was a lot of instability back then in the market. And there's singular events in history that have triggered spikes in the price of gold and silver. Today, it's like we have a laundry list of problems that we're dealing with, and it's just a question of what's the first domino to fall. If these experts are correct, and I personally believe that they are, some of these top economists out there, some of the brightest minds, you definitely want to be diversified by holding precious metals. It doesn't mean roll everything into gold or silver, you don't have to do that, but having a balanced portfolio, that definitely does make sense. And we work even with lots of financial advisors. A good financial advisor who has your best interest out there is going to recommend that you roll over and have some physical, tangible, precious metals. Again, people that do this aren't trying to, double their money overnight. That's not what gold is about. Now, if it's a byproduct of all this, heartache in the market, so be it. But I'd rather there be a strong economy than a weak economy. But to me, I just personally believe in having something tangible is always going to be worth something. I mean, just look at the US dollar, for example. It becomes worth less and less every single year. Inflation is eroding the purchasing power of the US dollar, but everything's becoming more expensive. I even read the other day McDonald's are putting up their prices across the board. So even fast food's becoming more expensive. The cost of living's becoming more expensive. But our paychecks aren't going up. People aren't increasing their salaries to compensate for inflation. So forget all the other problems we have in the world. If we just took the rate of inflation and how fast that's rising, that alone should be a strong enough belief system to understand the benefits of having a tangible asset versus a piece of paper that's becoming worth less and less each and every single year.
Yeah, one more question. Is this the inflation is so devastating right now. I mean, I am shocked at prices that I'm encountering, and I don't know how young families are making it. It really troubles me to see young families with 3-4 children and in the grocery store, and I'm wondering how are they feeding their families with these prices, because I'm cutting back. I'm cutting back on what I buy because the prices are just so outrageous. Like I'm not paying this, it's making everybody reevaluate what.
How to use Google's local service ads to get more appliance repair job leads. Hi, my name is Marlon and I'm with the Appliance Experts, and today we're going to discuss Google local service ads. You've probably heard of it. It's like the next greatest thing in lead generation. I refer to it as the new kid on the block for appliance repair lead generation. So we wanted to create this webinar to give you a little bit more in-depth information about it. And at the end, I'm actually going to give you a guide that goes into even more detail. So today's presentation is pretty much an overview of how it works to give you a little bit more information to see if it's something you want to take a look at and test for your 0.6. More than likely, the most reviews or the most 5-star reviews, I should say, is the first one the consumer is going to click on. So this is why it's even more important that if you're going to do Google local service ads, you really need to have a plan in place to get those 5-star reviews and to get reviews as much as possible. Google currently isn't displaying the amount of reviews. They're just displaying the score at this point, all right? So the 4.8 or the 5. So the next thing is the Google guaranteed badges there. Right now, all 3 advertisers have the badge. The next line, they all service the same city, phone number, and they're open, right? So the only thing that really stands out here to the consumer, the first thing that's going to stand out to them is the score of your reviews. So this is why it's important if you're trying to get the most clicks. The Google guarantee, that's basically telling consumers that Google is backing this company, right? They're standing behind the work. If it doesn't work out, they guarantee up to $2,000 that the consumer could potentially file a claim to get. All right. And here is just a blown up picture so we could actually see it a little bit better.
Check reported ahead on I-40 East. In 2 miles, take exit 407 onto State Route 66 towards Sevierville. exit. In 1 mile, turn right onto Westmount Road. In 1.2 miles, turn left onto Douglas Dam Road. At the next stop sign, turn left.